Yeah.
That reminds me of, scripture. Touch the hem of his garment.
Yeah, that's a bar. That is huge.
That's what that reminds me of. And I understand it, if somebody who God
does
forbid,
something so great, you know what I'm saying, and helped out in such a way.
Yeah, you want to feel them.
At least something like, if anything, a hug, right? But at the same time, if you can't because the crowd is so overwhelming, just let me touch the coat. What's good, y'all? It's the Demouchets REACT, and we're back with another video. Who we got today, C?
Today we're back with another American reaction. Super excited about this video. If you're new to us and we're new to you, make sure you scroll down, hit that subscribe button, and turn on the post notification bell
because we're on the road to 200K.
And we cannot get there without you guys, all right? Join the family. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
The Netherlands in the spring. Beautiful. Flowers in full bloom, parks pristine, streets spotless.
Why does it remind me of a crime story?
I know, bro, that's like that.
It's a far cry from what the same spots were like 70 years ago. The Germans had leveled the cities, murdered those who got in the way.
Gosh.
And sent tens of thousands of Jews to be gassed in death camps. The Dutch who were left were starving after the 5 years of brutal Nazi occupation. By 1945, they were so hungry, some were eating tulip bulbs to stay alive.
The starved, rickets-ridden bodies of this Dutch family are witnesses to the treatment the Germans meted out to our friends in Holland.
That's when the Canadians arrived, blasting their way into towns like this one, Apeldoorn, crushing the Nazis, liberating the people. The Dutch have never forgotten, never. And this week, they'll be in these streets again, by the thousands, to welcome back some of those Canadians, now in their 90s, who gave them their country, their lives back.
This was in the 90s.
Never ceasing to be amazed at the Dutch determination to say thank you.
Man, I can only imagine their stories.
The street with its pennants and Canadian flags is representative of many streets across the Netherlands right now, as the Dutch mark the major contribution that Canada played in the liberation of their country half a century ago.
I'm very young. I only heard stories from my grandfather and grandmother. But yes, they freed us 50 years ago, so that's why I'm here.
I think it's a love affair between the Canadians and the Dutch.
Well, 60 years is an awfully long time, but not long enough for the Dutch to forget the pain, the loss, the suffering, and the oppression of living under Nazi rule all those years during the Second World War. And not long enough either to forget the liberation and those who brought it to them.
It's a beautiful day.
I think it's again, the parades are still being shown. I think that's what...
Okay. So maybe, the soldiers.
Yeah.
The soldiers of today, although it wasn't them.
Yeah.
Maybe not as literal as we was thinking. Okay.
107,000 people left this place on the trains destined.
Here, look at it. Canadians are here.
Look at this street sign in an Apeldoorn suburb. If the name looks Canadian, it's because it is. A dozen streets in this neighborhood are named after one of the almost 8,000 Canadians who never came home from the battle. What was it about those young men who, through the generations, the Dutch won't stop thanking? Who were those guys? George Beale was one of them, a major with the 48th Highlanders. Every few days he'd stop and write a letter home to his wife, Ruth, in Toronto. This is one of them. Here's what he said. My own darling, I haven't written you for 5 days. I didn't feel much like it, sweetie, as we were fighting again, and I was awfully busy, and we've been having a tough fight. At the moment, I'm sitting in a city called Apeldoorn, and the Queen's Palace is within 100 yards of me. That's the Queen's Palace, right over there. We're about 100 yards from it. He might have been right here. We entered the town proper this morning after a big advance from the Isle River. I'm fine, Ruth, so don't worry, although I'm very tired. The enemy's running like the devil again, and we have to chase him.
Wow.
The fighting was bloody, and
that's
the
hard.
dying. But through it all, George wrote to Ruth about the love he had for his men. He wrote this one on Sunday, April 22nd. I have fought and lived with those men for over a year, and to me they seemed as though they were part of my family. They never refused to go any place I ordered, and did everything I asked them to, cheerfully and willingly, knowing most of the time that I might be sending them to their deaths. There were lots of individual Canadian heroes here, Army men like George Beale, but Air Force flyers too. 50 years ago, these fields near Nistelrode in southeastern Holland were home base for a Royal Canadian Air Force Spitfire squadron. One of those Canadian pilots was a 22-year-old chap from Lethbridge, Alberta, whose name was Richard Odette. Well, near the end of December 1944, Odette had flown more than 50 missions. But up until that point, he had scored no German kills. Well, on the 29th of December, 1944, all that changed. When Richard Odette flew out of one of these fields, he flew right into the history books. Before he returned, he had shot down 5 German aircraft. No other Canadian pilot, no other British pilot had scored that many victories in one mission. Meanwhile, frontline fighters broke through to capture key...
All right, let's paint the picture real quick. I mean, you guys just saw the visual. But this gentleman literally took it upon himself to go into the enemy lines. And I hear this a lot where, you know, they have to wait for a certain time to, you know, hit them where they won't expect it. Mm-hmm. And all their plane crafts, they got destroyed. So you can only imagine the footwork that the Germans had to use to try to make up ground that they couldn't make up in the air. Right. But the Canadians was coming with this pressure that had them all moving farther and farther back. So that taking out the airplanes is like a, you know, a big thing, a huge thing. Yeah, because that's air power.
You gotta be on the ground in the other parts of the military now. I don't like talking about the military, y'all. I don't like. It's not military, but war.
Yeah, war is not beautiful, man. War is it's definitely a burnt page corner in the books that people don't like. Like you see, when you flip through pages and they got that little one burned page, you're not gonna catch it. You know what I'm saying? You're still flipping through, and people don't like to talk about it because it is bad. It's family, you know, members that's involved, and it's history, and it's all some level connected. And the piece of life is all connected.
Yeah, because you know. I had a grandfather who was killed in the war. I had a grandfather who fought in the war. So I don't like hearing about this.
Strategic locations. All this was happening as the Nazis were facing their final desperate days, until that last moment when the fighting and the dying suddenly stopped. 70 years ago this week, the war ended. And here's what George Beale wrote to Ruth on that same day. You can feel the emotion in his voice. Darling, you couldn't possibly have any idea just what kind of a reception it has been and still is. The people go simply mad. And I had the honor, darling, of being the leading vehicle, my Jeep. Any town we went through, the people crowded the roads, and we had a most difficult time getting past them. They all want to touch your hand or even kiss you, and they simply pelted us with flowers.
Kissing you.
My Jeep looked like a florist shop. It does make all the hardships worthwhile when you see the joy of these liberated people. For this year's returning heroes, new medals from the local mayor.
Your memories, your thoughts guide us as we shape our future.
And new thoughts about an old battle.
Well, I was stationed here during the war as a Canadian Women's Army Corps, which I'm very proud of. And it brings back so many memories. And I always have a place in my heart for Holland, for Appledorn.
It's a great, great day, you know. For the little thing we did, we get so much, 1,000 times more time.
The Dutch people are so
The Dutch people are the
faithful to us.
best people in the world, and I mean it.
Wangeningen just down the road from Appledorn, in that little building. That's where the Germans finally surrendered. These extraordinary pictures capture the moment.
To the Commander-in-Chief, 21 Army Group. These forces to lay down their arms and to surrender unconditionally.
And there at the table, Canadian General George Kitching, distinguished then and just as distinguished when I chatted with him at the same table 50 years later. How do you feel when you come back in this room?
It's almost as if they're ghosts, as if you are the German on the opposite side of the table, Peter. It was full of people then. Any movement, it was a very quiet room. And in spite of the fact that there were 30 Canadian reporters, they were quiet.
The general is gone now, and so are many of the men who fought with him. But the ones who are left, the ones who still come, the ones the Dutch, young and old, still so adore, are here with their memories. The ones that hurt, the ones that leave them quiet, and the ones that somehow make them smile.
I've never felt that I sacrificed anything to be part of a liberating army.
There were so many Canadians who lost their lives here in the Netherlands. How did you handle that on a day-to-day basis?
I put it out of my mind altogether, but nonetheless I cry when I go to the cemetery and see my friends' graves. I never learned to cry. You just feel it inside.
What does it mean to you guys to be remembered the way you are here in this country, the way they react to you?
It's 70 years ago that we were here, but still, the kids are still enthusiastic about what we did here 70 years ago. And I love to see kids the way they greet us and the way they look in such admiration at us, you know.
Really, it was something to feel the happiness, the joy of the liberation.
I asked the people I was staying with, what is this touching bit, you know? They asked permission to touch you. And I couldn't get over that, so they want to touch a liberator, and they want their children to touch a liberator.
That reminds me of, scripture. Touch the hem of his garment.
Yeah, that's a bar. That is huge. That's huge.
That reminds me of, and I understand it. If somebody, God
does
forbid,
something so great, you know what I'm saying, and helped out in such a way.
Yeah, you want to feel them.
At least something like, if anything, a hug, right? But at the same time, if you can't because the crowd is so overwhelming, just let me touch the coat.
Yes.
Just let me something.
20 years ago, I asked the then mayor of Appledorn why it was that the Dutch never forgot the Canadians. His answer was very simple, very direct. He said, you have to have been occupied to appreciate what freedom really means. And when you do, you never forget who gave it to you. That's why Canada is never forgotten here. Never.
Wow.
Yes, sir. I'm speechless, man. That was a well told story. History is it definitely, you know, leaked over into what today is.
Right. We didn't know that, you know, the relationship between Canada and the Netherlands was like that deep, that close. You know, people still thanking them all these years later. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. I haven't seen anything like this before. Like where, you know, something dealing with the war and the people still feel the same way today towards the people who helped them deliberate it. You know, so this was heartwarming to see.
Yeah, they're taken care of. You can tell that much.
Yeah.
They're going to love on y'all forever and ever.
Right. So let us know your personal stories between the two relationships. We would love to read them.
Yeah.
So we hope you guys enjoyed this video with us. Like this video, subscribe, turn on the post notification bell. We have enabled our super thanks if you like to support the channel that way, as well as our reaction request form is in our description box below. We'll see you soon.
Peace.